I am actually here to talk about transformational leadership. So I guess I'd like to start off tonight by asking you a pretty simple question. When you hear the word Everest, what comes to mind?
Big mountain.
Big mountain, highest oxygen tanks, cold, Sherpas. Okay. A lot of those things are practical things. How about metaphorically? What comes to mind? Challenge? Strength? Apex. Achieving something? Impossibility. Perseverance, risk. So all those traditional things that you would normally attach to something like Mount Everest. For me, Mount Everest has always been about hope. And I'll kind of take a minute and explain why. So I didn't just wake up one morning and decide to go out and climb Mount Everest as an adult, thinking that it'd be a really good idea. When I was a kid, I was actually really sick. Bad asthma, bad allergies. All my friends used to call me the boy in the bubble. Couldn't really go outside until I was about 10 years old. So when I was stuck inside, my father had a collection of National Geographic magazines in his library. And so every night I'd go in, I'd grab a stack about yay wide, and I'd pull them off the shelf, and I'd carry them to my room, and I'd just flip through the pages every single night, taking myself to all these different places on the planet. Everything from wildlife to mountains to rivers to different cultures. It amazed me, because to me it was like, going to the mailbox was like walking on the moon. So one day I came across the May 1963 edition of National Geographic that had the first American Everest expedition in it. And a fellow by the name of Lou Whitaker and Jim Whitaker, who are actually twins from the Seattle, Washington area. The Whitakers were the first to climb Mount Everest, and believe it or not, they also grew up with asthma and really bad allergies. So from that point forward, I was hooked. I thought, if these guys could do it, I definitely want to do it. Now, not many folks know what they want to do with their lives when they're 6 or 7 years old. And a lot of kids, firemen, police people, you know, the standard stuff. So when I started walking around telling people I wanted to become a mountaineer and I wanted to go climb Everest, my mother and father still chuckle about it to this day. But ultimately, you need to have a beginning to know where you're going to go. So knowing where you come from often helps in deciding where you want to take it. And for me, I was fortunate enough with this dream to actually, and this is a nod to the Fish and Wildlife, I'm a card-carrying Ducks Unlimited. I have my stamp every single year. That's me as a little tiny hunter, way back when. I got started in South America on Cotopaxi, 19,300 feet. My father's actually from Quito, and so when the doctors, when I was a kid, said, you know, it'd be a really good idea to get him to altitude and have him experience the clean, fresh air, where could you go? Could you go to Colorado? And of course my father said, well, no, we'll go back home. We'll go to Ecuador. So when in Ecuador, there are all these high mountains with huts kind of right at the base of the glaciers, right at the base of the snow line. And you'll find Ecuadorian families that will just go to the huts, have picnics, have lunch, and come back down. So for me, in the summer, that's what my family did. We'd go up to the edge of the glacier, to the hut, we'd have lunch, we'd have dinner, we'd hang out at the high, thin, clean mountain air, and then we'd go back down. And when we were there, I'd see all these mountaineers that I read about in National Geographic. I'd see them with their equipment coming back down from the climbs, and they seemed to me to be larger than life. How could you do something, and all the metaphors that you chose with Everest, so seemingly impossible, that involve challenge and reaching the apex and overcoming insurmountable odds, and all these things, these metaphors that were attached to success for me. For me, that's how I started to label success. How would you become a part of that? I didn't know. I didn't know because I was still pretty young. Now, I share this picture with you, the upper route on Cotopaxi, just to give you an idea that right here you're looking at over 3,000 feet, about 3,500 feet. And over time, as I kind of got into mountaineering a little bit more in high school, we all remember what we were like in high school. It's not, for some people, further away than others, but overall, you remember what you were like. Full of drive, full of ambition. You had no idea where it was going to take you, but you knew it was going to take you someplace. You're kind of all over the place. You're excited about all these new things. And that's when I got started on Cotopaxi as a young teenager. guiding people as a junior guide up and down this mountain. How many times? 127 times I got to climb this thing. In every weather you could possibly imagine on the planet. Heat, cold, snow, thunderstorms that rolled up from the jungle, you name it. Over the years in high school, if anybody had to turn around because they were sick, guess who got to take them down? If anybody had to turn around inches from the summit because somebody couldn't make it, guess who had to turn them around? Guess who got to turn around even if everything was fine just to go down and get water started? Me, the junior guy. So out of that 127 times, when I was getting my start, guess how many times it took me before I actually got to the summit? That'd be really bad. 26 times I was on this mountain before I actually made the summit. Now I'm going to throw a lot of metaphorical things at you tonight, but the one thing that struck me as I was listening to all of you speak today is the passion that you bring to your jobs and your positions with Fish and Wildlife. The thing that struck me the most is that no matter how challenging it is at the refuge or with bureaucracy, you never give up hope. So to me, going up and down, it didn't matter how many times I went up and down without making the top. I knew ultimately, at some point, I was going to get there. So mountaineering is a lot about doing stuff that any sane person would choose not to do, frankly. Getting up in the middle of the night in extremely cold weather, starting out as the sun would rise at extremely high altitudes. And when people ask me, what's it like climbing at altitude? I tell them to take a normal straw from any fast food restaurant, McDonald's or wherever, get a clothespin to pinch your nose, go find a really big flight of stairs, and try to breathe just through the straw while trying to run full tilt up the stairs. You kind of get an idea physically of what it's like to actually climb an altitude. It's really difficult. But bit by bit on Cotopaxi, all those metaphors started happening for me. I got to see a lot of amazing things, and I got to experience more and more what it took to really dig deep and explore what it meant to, no matter how many times you got turned around, no matter how many times you got kicked in the head from weather or illness, to get back up and keep on trying. You know, the other component that I found to be really something that you don't hear mountaineers talk a lot about is the cultures that you travel through. Having half of my family from South America was a pretty big benefit for me, because ultimately it taught me that as an American I didn't live in a bubble. And in hearing about some of your projects that you went off and did, especially, I keep calling you Mr. Georgia, but that's the best. Understanding that the work that you do is valued globally, not just locally, plays a big role in what we do and what I do. And engaging people in different cultures and engaging people, especially in Ecuador, because for me it was home. It was opening the doors to my home country. It was a really important part of the work that I did in South America starting out. I figured if the local porters could do it, I could do it too. I think after this picture was taken, I had a tough time walking for about 2 days. It's not like carrying a backpack at all. But ultimately, that's what it was all about. Understanding the culture and understanding the process. Then the leadership component came in for me. As my guiding experience grew as a teenager, people started talking about conflict resolution and problem solving and interpersonal dynamics within team functions. And I, as a 21-year-old, I thought, whoa, wait a minute, hang on a second. I'm here to climb. All I want to do is go up, go down, get a couple of pictures on the summit, hang out with really fun people. What are you talking about? And a really great mentor of mine, an amazing American mountaineer by the name of Pete Athens, said, Luis, I work with an organization called Outward Bound. At this time it was in Colorado. He said, I think your skills as a mountaineer are developing, but your skills as a leader, that's something you need to look at. Because ultimately, it's not about going up and down. It's about what you do during that process that's really going to count. So I ended up going to work for Outward Bound. Now, Outward Bound, do a lot of folks know about Outward Bound? Something similar? Yeah, a little bit? It's basically a personal growth and development program that uses the wilderness as the medium for that growth and development. So it's very much based in experiential learning, be it